Today on Arts for Life's Midweek Masterpiece, we're going to be creating positive negative space hand collages. Stay tuned and I'll walk you through the process. Hi everyone! My name's Annie and I'm the Program Director at Arts for Life at Mission Children's Hospital in Asheville. Thank you so much for joining us today in our virtual studios where we believe that art is for everyone. Have you ever noticed how expressive you can be with your hands? How sometimes your hands are talking and you're not even saying anything? How when you hold your hands in a certain way, everybody knows what you mean and you didn't even say anything. Well, artists have noticed this, and for years, pretty much since the beginning of time, artists have created artwork with hands in it. So as you're working today on your own collage, I want you to look at some work of some other artists who have also used hands in their work. Think about the way that you hold your hands and how that can say something about the way you feel. Think about the way you hold your fingers and how a gesture can say so much and you don't even have to say anything. Think about when you hold your hands together, how it can be something like an offering or a question. Think about when you hold your hands tight in a fist, how it can say something about purpose and action, and it can also say something about anger or frustration. Well, here at Arts for Life, we love to make art with our hands and of our hands. So today, we're going to do just that. As you're creating your own collage today, I really want you to be thinking about what you want your hands to say. I'm going to turn my camera around and I'm going to walk you through the steps of how to make this one. Here's what you'll need for your collage. The first thing you'll need is some thick white paper, thick enough to hold some paint. You'll need paints and some paintbrushes, at least one large one and one medium or small. You also need some water. I always like to have a little piece of paper towel too whenever I'm painting, just for blotting. And the other thing that you'll need is, this is just some salt. It's just regular salt that I got out of my cupboard, so you'll need some of that too. Later on in the project, you'll also need a piece of black paper. This one's 6 by 9 inches, and I made it just by cutting a bigger piece of black paper in half. Then we'll also need some scissors, a glue stick, and a pencil. But we'll get to this stuff later. We're going to start with the painting first. The reason we're going to start with the painting is because we want to give it some time to dry. It takes a little bit of time using the technique that we're going to use. It takes a little bit of time to dry, so we're going to do it first. I'm going to teach you just a really simple watercolor technique that we call wet on wet. And the first thing you're going to do is take your big brush and you're just going to dip it in the water, and you want to get your whole paper completely wet. Now you're just painting the water. You're not using any paint yet. You're just doing water. And it's okay if you lay it on pretty thick so that there's some little puddles here and there. That's just fine. You can see I put some scrap paper behind mine because I didn't want to get my table messy. You want to work kind of quickly because you want to keep your paper nice and wet the whole time you're painting on it. So just be thinking about that. I'm going to move this salt out of the way for right now. Okay. The other thing that you could do if you want to, instead of using a paintbrush, if you have a spray bottle like this one, or any kind of spray bottle really, you can also spray your paper. Okay, see how it looks nice and wet? It's shiny, glossy. Okay, I'm going to put my big brush aside and I'm going to take my medium-sized brush, get it nice and wet, and I'm going to choose my color. This wet on wet technique kind of has a tie-dye effect. It means that the color, when you put it on the wet paper, it diffuses a little bit and it's really fun to watch. So there's really no right or wrong way to do this. But what you're going to do is fill your paper with color. Now the example I showed you earlier, I used cool colors. The cool colors are like blues and greens and purples. So on this one that I'm making, I'm going to use warm colors. Warm colors are the colors of like fire, so like red and orange and yellow. But you can really use whatever colors you want. This is also a really good way to see how colors mix together and how they interact with one another. So I'm going to start off with just some red here. You'll probably notice that there are spots on your paper that are drier, some spots that are drier and some spots that are wetter. And that's okay. There's really, like I said, there's really no wrong way to do this. Okay, I'm going to wash off my brush, get a different color. I'm going to go for orange. Get it nice and colorful. The more you kind of rub it around in your color, the brighter your color is going to be when you put it on the paper. Which is good for this because what we're doing, as soon as the paint hits the paper, it kind of diffuses and becomes a lot lighter anyway. So I really like to put my brush around a bunch in there. And be patient with it. Sometimes I find myself getting impatient and I want the colors to touch one another and I want to make them go together. But the beauty of this technique is that you don't always see right away the cool patterns and the way the paint spreads out. You can't predict it. Okay, I'm going to change colors again. Remember, I'm using warm colors here. So I'm going to keep with my theme. You'll notice when you hit a dry spot because your color just doesn't diffuse as much. You also may notice that certain colors are really good at diffusing and other colors are not. If you find a place on your paper that seems dry and you want to get it a little more wet, you can always go back in with your brush and just give it a little more water. Okay, and go back to this orange because I really like it. So again, you'll want to think about how colors interact with one another. If you remember on the color wheel, colors that are complementary colors point to each other on the color wheel. And when you mix those colors together, you almost always get brown. So brown is a beautiful color, and if you don't mind it being on your painting, then that's great. If you want to try and avoid some browns, then avoid using complementary colors. Now you might be wondering what this salt is for. So salt, when you add it to water, salt absorbs water. So when you sprinkle it on your paper, here and there, and especially in the watery spots, what those pieces of salt are going to do is soak up the water in those places and leave some little, I like to call them little starbursts. They'll just leave some little dots here and there. So as you're working along, you can always add some salt here and there just to make a more interesting pattern. I'll show you an example. Let's see if I can find one here. So see here in this example how it's a little bit cloudy right there and there's some little dots here and there. That's from the salt. Same here. Okay. I'm going to keep painting. My paper's getting a little bit dry, so I'm going to add some water here and there. The thing about the salt is once you add it, you want to try not to paint over it again. Because what will happen is it'll just mix a little bit more with that water and it won't have the same effect. Okay. Isn't it so cool? I could watch paint spread out any day of the week. I love these oranges together. I always find that when I'm painting, I always gravitate towards the same sort of mixing of colors, and I try to make those colors again. What you're going to do when you do this process is you're going to end up with colors that have never been made before. Okay. Add a little bit of yellow here and there. I'm going to try and fill in all my white space. I'm not sure how this one escaped. I'm going to try and fill in all my white space, but you don't have to. However you want yours to look is exactly right. And I'm glad I have this paper underneath here because I'm getting a little puddle going off the edge of the paper. A little more yellow. I'm going to put some salt down there on that one. Okay, so right now we are just wanting to fill in the whole paper with color. So when you're done, what you're going to do is set this aside to dry. It's going to take a little while. Oh, you can use your paper towel to soak up some of the extra water if you want to. See how when you lay it on the paint, it just kind of soaks it right up? I like to watch that too. Okay, so I'm going to set this part aside and we're going to come back and I'm going to show you what's next. Next we're going to copy your hand on a black piece of paper. I'm going to set this one aside to dry. I already moved my paints and such. I'm going to set this aside to dry along with the scrap paper that I had underneath. I'm going to do a quick wipe of my surface. I'm going to bring what we need for our hand. Okay, we'll need that in just a second. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take your hand and you're going to use it to take up as much space on this little piece of paper as possible. But really you can position your hand any way you want to. You can close your fingers, you can put one finger down if you want to, you can try to make a gesture. Whatever you want to do is fine. I'm just going to lay mine flat just to make it easier. If you can get a little bit of your arm in there too, that's really great. And then what you're going to do is you're going to trace around your hand. So if you need help from a grown-up like your parent or a nurse that's nearby, call them in here and have them help you with this part. So what you're going to do, what I'm doing with my pencil is just bumping right up next to all my fingers all the way around. I'm going pretty slow so I can really get the shape of my hand all the way around each finger. I always get stuck there. Okay, and then a little bit of my hand too. Okay, so I don't know if you can see it, but pencil usually shows up pretty well on black paper. So I outlined my whole hand in pencil. The next part I'm going to do is a little tricky, so if you need help with this part, you can do that too. You can get a grown-up to help you. But what we're going to do is cut along the line that we just drew, and we're going to try not to cut any of the paper behind it. So we're just going to follow along. There's going to be a lot of turns for our scissors. I want to try to keep that edge intact. Just going really slow, taking my time, turning my paper when I need to turn, turning my scissors when I need to turn. It's really hard to cut right on the pencil line, so just do the best you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. My scissors are getting a little caught up there, so I'm gonna have to turn like that. Okay, so now what we have are, usually this would be trash, but this part we're gonna use for our artwork too. So we have a hand that I cut out, and then the paper that I cut my hand out with. See how there is negative space here? That means that there is a hole right there that's in the shape of my hand. Okay, so I'm gonna get my paper that I made. So one thing you might notice is that you have, after your paper has dried, mine's still a little bit wet here and there. I'm gonna use my paper towel to clean it off. Is you have these little pieces of salt here and there. We don't want to use those. It makes it hard to glue things on. So you can just take your thumb and scrape this off onto the table or into the trash can. You can clean it up later. It's just salt. It's not really that messy. Okay. So I'm getting the salt off mine. Okay. Okay. So now what you're going to do is decide how you want to arrange your hands on here. I think I'm going to put this one here. And this one on this side. Actually, you can see that there are pencil lines. I don't really mind that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I think it might look better if, I'm going to turn this over like this, if I put this one on this side and this one on this side. But you can arrange it however you want to. So you guessed it, we're going to glue them down. And this side's going to be pretty easy because all we have to do is put glue on the back of that. This side is a little bit trickier, so I'm going to show you how we're going to do it. I'm going to move this to the side for just a second, and I'm going to take this off and turn it over. Then I'm going to get my glue stick, and I'm going to be really generous with the glue, especially at the edges of my paper, and especially down here in these little humpy parts in between my fingers. You can never have too much glue, right? Okay, going all the way down to the edge. So now it's completely covered with glue. I'm gonna move this hand for just a second. It's completely covered with glue, but it's a little bit floppy. And what I want to make sure is that this edge and this corner match up together. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to line that up first, that corner up first, and then I'm going to line up the top edge all the way across like that. And then I'm going to pull this side down and make sure that that line matches up with the edge of the paper, which it does. And then I'm going to pull this side down, pulled a little too hard there, and make sure it lines up. And then I'm going to push down each of the little humpy spaces in between my hand. Okay, so then this one's going to be a little bit easier. I like to have my thumbs touching. I like that idea, but you can do it any way you want to. I'm just going to put some glue on mine. Whoops, gotta roll up the glue a little bit. And this time when I'm putting glue on my hand, I want to make sure I get all my fingers really good, because it's always the fingers that come curling up off your paper if you don't get enough glue on them. Perfect. Okay. Oops, you know what? I said I liked my thumbs together, but I actually put the glue on the wrong side. So I guess it'll look like I'm just waving at you with my right hand 2 times. All right, so that's it. So this one, like I said, uses warm colors, and here's the other example that uses cool colors. I can't wait to see what yours looks like. Thanks so much for joining us today. I had such a good time. Here's what I made. It turned out a little different than I thought it would, but I kind of like it when that happens. Yours looks different too, I'm sure, because you wanted your hands to say something different than what I wanted my hands to say. I hope you'll share it with us. You can do that on social media with the hashtag ArtsForLifeNC. Until next time, keep creating, and I'll see you soon. Bye.